Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Rogues Guild. We're just doing another recording here. We're actually going to be covering the Kirik list that went to Orlando, Florida, and got second place. It was piloted by Jake Adame. Am I pronouncing that right?
Last name Adame.
Adame. All right. Well, awesome job with your performance, man. I believe you got second place in seed, and then you also got second place in top cut to 8, right?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So just in general, I'm going to be asking you some questions, like some of the cards that you decided to put in this list, specifically being like High Speed and Shooting Star in the main board. Those were definitely some changes from previous lists. Just wanted to kind of go over them with you. And so to start off with, the 4 High Speed in the main board, what was kind of the incentive behind that? Why did you decide to actually keep 4 High Speed in there? I've been hearing a lot of people talking about how it's not worth keeping a total count of 4 in there.
So the reason I kept a count of 4 is usually it never feels like a dead draw to me. In a format right now, as a red player, I don't have access to Thunder or Lightning Strike right now. That's my best substitute for those just instant burn spells, one-drop instant burn spells.
Okay.
So I run 4 of them as in the main board because I would like to see them, especially in closer situations where it's like, okay, I need 8 damage to push them over to get this victory.
Right.
Top deck that 4th High Speed. Okay,
right.
Cool. I've got my 8 damage. So it's more of a replacement as a burn spell for Thunder Lightning Strike.
Okay. So at that point, it just winds up being another burn outlet for you, which is really interesting while giving your Resonator swiftness. And then, like, the Shooting Star in the main board, was that really just for TSW? Was the list kind of just engineered for TSW at that point? And how did that actually impact the TSW matchup?
It was for TSW specifically because I've seeing as it did really well in Minneapolis a while back ago. You kind of get ready for the TSW matchup. I didn't think I was going to see that many Chimimis outside of like maybe the other half of the field, but that's why the Pig Squadrons were sideboarded, also in the sideboard. So if I ran into the Chimimi matchup, I could just immediately take out the Shooting Stars, put in the Pigs. But the Shooting Stars were literally just for the Time Spinning Witch matchup, which I thought I was going to see a lot of. Seeing I think it was 4 in pool play and then 1 in top 8 cut.
Okay.
So felt pretty good.
Yeah, and so to kind of go over your matchup a bit, so round 1 you played against a Chimimi, which you 2-0'd. You then proceeded to play TSW, which you drew against that. What really happened in that draw? Was it just there wasn't enough time to finish the game out, or did things not go as expected, or was there a misplay there?
It was just game 1. He got game 1. Go to game 2. I get game 2, and the game 1 went really long. Even though I went ahead and scooped it, I think we ended up wasting about 25 minutes on the clock on there.
Oh wow.
Game 2 was a little bit faster, but it still was like 15-20 minutes to get the win. And then just going into game 3, we've wasted so much time on the first 2 games,
right,
that it was just hard for us to finish.
Okay, because a lot of people think Kirik and they think it's got to be fast. The game ends really quickly, so it's just surprising to actually see a draw. Surprisingly enough, at the 10K for myself, like most of my games went for about 40 minutes, sometimes a bit more. And I believe 3 or 4 rounds I was actually in time with Kirik, which was really surprising. So just want to see that from another pilot, if it was just me slow playing, or if it actually just happens every now and then with Kirik. Then round 3, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just say, if you go once we start talking about the top 8 matchup, specifically the matchup for the 1st and 2nd seed, I felt like I had to play a lot slower against certain decks. Oh yeah. Because of just about how much control there is right now in the format.
Definitely, especially with that new Hanzo list. So that was a surprise.
I'm excited to play it as someone who likes to play off turn in a lot of other card games.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to playing it at locals after Christmas.
Okay. Is it going to be that like a big change for you in play style? From what I've heard, you've tended to kind of be the Kirik player at your local scene. So.
I'm designated red player for locals. But no, it shouldn't be too, like, so if it plays like a mid-range deck, I'll probably be able to pick it up fairly like without too much trouble, because that's what I play. I play a deck fairly similar to that Hanzo list in Magic the Gathering, for Bant Spirits, where everything's pretty much played off turn. So it shouldn't be too much of a huge playstyle change.
Okay. And then I saw that you played 3 TSWs in a row after that in round 4, 5, and 6. 2-1, 2-0, then 2-1. Then played another TSW in top 8. So you beat all of your TSW matchups at the entire event.
There was a Chamimi after that TSW draw. It was a Chamimi, then it was 3 more TSWs.
Correct, yeah. Oh, I forgot. Didn't mention the Chamimi. Okay, but yeah, like it's surprising to actually see just that much success from the Kirik list against all the TSWs. For me personally, in testing, it always tended to be a 50-50. So what did you actually feel from kind of just the matchup in general? Did it feel favored either way? Did it feel like there was a lack of experience on one side? Did it feel that maybe some of the TSWs just weren't drawing that well, or?
So I know when I played, trying to remember the TSW right after that Chamimi. That would have been going into round 4. I want to say that was playing against Cal, and he just drew poorly for those 2 games. The next game, I'm trying to remember who my actual opponent was for that one, but they just didn't draw their Dragon Roars when they needed them, before I could slam down the Ultra Dragon Shooting Star. And at that point, they can't really respond to the Shooting Star.
Right.
So he just gets to sit and play. Even if they sideboard into the arrow traps, I'm not really worried about it, because it's just there to sit on the board and be a threat for most of the game.
Okay.
And then the third one, it was just poor draws, and I feel like not having the correct sideboard tech for Kirik in most of those matchups hurt them a lot more than I thought it was going to.
Right. And then specifically in top 8, who was it that you played against in top 8 in your first round? I believe I had the name of the person. Let me see if I can.
I got it on Facebook as well. Give me.
It was Jalen Rojas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened in top 8 in that match?
Top 8, he didn't have. I don't think he had the experience against the Kirik matchup to start with. And then on the first game, it was just a slight misplay on his part for game 1, and then game 2 was just every draw that I needed coming back to back to back.
Okay. So what's really sounding like is basically just Kirik is able to snowball any mistake on the other player's part, any lack of drawing optimal hands, and just basically at any room that you tend to give the Kirik list, it just tends to snowball at that point and just steal the game. So
yeah, and the addition of the Welsers in the main board, just the 2 of, really pushes that home, because like if you mess up on a turn 3 play, the Kirik can just go, okay, God's Art the Welser, high speed him with Awakening, take 8, here's another 26 points of damage on just Welser.
Yeah.
So if you're not careful, he just punishes you on that turn, and and most of the time if you do that, or whenever I did that, the game was over at that point.
Yeah, just a lot of explosive potential out of anywhere, just if the lore rights aren't actually left open to potentially be played that turn. So it's pretty neat. So I also had a question about the play dead. Typically in my list, I was playing as a 4-of. With TSW being so dominant right now, I decided to lower it a bit. Did you actually feel a 3 count was still really solid in the list, or would you have preferred to take some more of the play dead out, or maybe have bumped it back to 4?
Playdead's, honestly, to me, Playdead's in a really weird spot in the current meta, where we do have a lot of graveyard interaction, and especially in the sideboard of a lot of decks. So if they see you playing Playdead, they're going to immediately put in their Evil Elemental Uprisings. So if anything, I'd probably tick down Playdead to a 2-of, and probably tick up a couple of cards to either a 4-of, or find like an additional slot for Power Spike or something like that.
Okay. And then the lack of Shengung Pao and the Black Spot Tiger in there. What did you think of that, especially with some of the other lists playing it? I believe there was one list that made top 8 that played the Shengung Pao in the main board and the Black Spot Tiger in the sideboard. What did you think about those two cards? Did you miss not having them in the list, or?
No, I talked to Steven about it a little bit, but I just feel like they gummed up some of the slots that I would prefer to have in the 2-drop slots. I'd rather have piggies and more battle art chants and stuff like that I could fetch up.
Okay.
With Kirik's abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having a nice 2-drop that would be like 2-drop that might be a 7/7 swiftness if I had a pig in play.
Right.
Without the Black Spot Tigers in the main board.
Okay. And then you mentioned something that you actually wanted to bring up in the video. I believe you said something of how pivotal it was to actually play around Lorite in this meta. In particular, what kind of plays were you thinking of in order to bait out Lorites?
So I think a good example of this is if you go back to the video where I was playing Riot Miles for the first and second slot.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a deck where he's going to play on my turn to begin with, where that deck wants to play on your turn to begin with. You know he's going to leave up at least the mana to cast one Lorite or some way to counter. The most important part about this is being able to restock your 10 strength counters most of the time.
Right.
And it's either you to play around Lorite in that situation, I usually would go ahead and be like, okay, I'm at a point where I don't need additional stones this turn. I don't see a need to call an extra stone because there's nothing I'm going to cast at more than I would try to top out at like 5 stones. So you sit there at 5 stones, leave Kirik up and go, okay, I'm going to play my turn out. Maybe play a pig or some way to untap Kirik and then go ahead and pass the turn. Or just wait to call stone or refill after combat phase and see what his responses are.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they replay, tap out their green sources, you have a pig in play, so you can go ahead and tap and untap 1 or 2 extra times.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go ahead and try to get that Lorite out of his hand and make him waste that resource while still coming out on top somehow. And that's like the only matchup where the Hanzo matchup was the only one where Play Dead really felt super impactful. Was because you needed to be able to play around the Lorites and him quick casting on your turn.
Right.
For the most part.
Being able to bring back Oil Pig seems really sweet off the Play Dead as well, which is another reason why I kind of like keeping it in there, at least as a 2-of, especially since you can find it so easily with the search every turn. Did you feel safe with the number of battle arts, like the counter battle arts? How many times did you actually whiff with the ability? Were there times that you felt like it was potentially a little too low in order to find the battle arts that you needed, or maybe it was too high, or?
I will say I whiffed, I think, a total of 4 to 5 times day 1, and then I know I whiffed, I think, 2 times day 2. I do like the number of battle arts that is in there. I like being able to look at top 5, grab a card, essentially draw 2 cards a turn.
Mm-hmm.
As a red deck that you might gas out at any point.
Right.
But it's still the fear of, okay, I'm a red deck that's an aggro-based deck, and I'm running a lot of spells instead of a lot of creatures. It's still I think it's about 20/20, but it still feels like if you don't get in there those first 5 turns,
mm-hmm.
you're kind of just holding off and hoping you draw creatures every turn, and then getting in battle art off of your ability.
Right. So it's just a weird position to be in where you really want more resonators to ensure that consistency of hitting them early, but at the same time, you want to be able to just continually gassing up with those battle arts and to ensure that you don't whiff turn after turn on the second ability. So it's a weird spot, but it tends to work out pretty well when you split evenly. So, and you definitely obviously had success with it on your part, so.
Yeah. And that's another reason that I ran 4 of high speeds. It's like, if you top deck it, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's still a burn spell if they have a creature in play, because you can just go ahead and cast it, target their creature, deal 4 damage to them. Not optimal, but it's there. It's always an option on the table. and then if you use Kirik's ability, you can look at the top 5, and if there's no battle arts except for high speed, you're grateful to at least pull one card out of there and push the rest down.
Right. So thankfully on your part, you actually didn't see any of the 2 AU that were represented at the event. What are your thoughts on keeping potentially one cross counter in the main board for the AU matchup? Do you think at that point it's just better to just forfeit the game 1 and hope to try and get back in game 2 and 3, or is it worth considering taking something out to put that one cross counter in? Specifically being like you were considering dropping Play Dead down to a 2 of. Would you consider it worth taking out one of the Play Dead for a cross counter main board, or would it be better reserved for something else?
I still feel like if I'm going to drop the Play Dead down to a 2 of, I'm going to fill that void with a Power Spike just in case for the turn 4 potential to go over the top.
Okay, so did you actually have success with Power Spike?
I have success with it at locals. I never brought it into the main board. It was more for the mirror matchup if I ran into it. But going back to the AU matchup, I honestly think I would try to play game 1 out and see if they miss. Like, show me that you can play it first off. Because if you misplay it and I win, that's a free game that I got, and then sideboard all 3 of my cross counters in as soon as I could.
Very true. Very true. All right. And just in general, after the event, what are kind of like your thoughts on the meta at this point? What do you see it shaping up to be? What do you really feel to be kind of dominating in the format? Any bans that you're really looking forward to or hoping that the company might really stand behind? Just in general, how was the event for you? What do you feel about this meta?
The event was fun. I see the meta shifting over to a more mid-range control, especially with the spoilers that we've been seeing so far. Last night's spoilers were kind of fun for me to see some nice red cards, but
I definitely agree with that. It was nice to see those.
But with the support that Hanzo's getting, especially with that Master Rune, I see a lot more. I see the game slowing down a little bit more. And we're going to go into a more mid-range control meta. Aggro will find its place if, kind of like with this tournament, if no one preps for aggro, you're just going to show up with the red deck and go, cool, do you have your answers? Nope. Okay, we're going to game. I'm going to go straight to top 8 with this, hopefully, if you don't answer this. But with the way things are going, especially with the table flip card, if Hanzo becomes the big thing, I see that being a 4 of in every Hanzo deck, at least sideboard, including the 15 card sideboard, and aggro might have a little bit harder of a time finding its place. But I honestly feel like aggro's always gonna have that spot that hovers there. It's like if you don't respect it, it's just gonna pop up and show up in top 8 somehow, and you're gonna have to deal with it. Going to bans, I honestly think the only card that permits a ban is Distortion of Time, but I don't think it's. I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but I don't think it's that powerful of a card when there's enough answers to it in the current format.
I think the biggest issue is a lot of the colors just don't have the tools to actually interact. Obviously, green has all the tools that it needs. White is almost there where it can interact with almost every kind of mechanic in the game. It can interact with IU, with Kirik, with all the other decks. It just can't interact with Distortion quite yet.
It can't. It doesn't have its way to interact with the. Actually, no, it does have its way to interact with the graveyard. It starts off as a black card and then flips over to the white card.
Well, yeah.
But outside of Grim, white really doesn't have a way to interact with the graveyard. Red's only interaction with the graveyard is Burial Rites, and that's for creature spells. So we splash the black in to get our Evil Elemental Uprising. And outside of that, it's not that good of an answer to it. But I mean, we have to. I want to see what the spoilers for the next set see, because we might get more graveyard interaction for a lot more colors. Maybe white gets its graveyard interaction. If you know Magic, maybe white gets its Graph Digger's Cage for 1 white. And we'll see, but until we see more interaction for the graveyard, I think Distortion needs to get put on the back burner just a little bit.
I would be inclined to agree with that. Well,
just, don't ban Moret.
Yeah, it's kind of become a necessary evil at this point.
I'll take Stifle on a body.
Yeah.
10 times out of 10 over being time walked every turn.
I would have to agree.
So.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, I believe this is your first GP top.
This is my first GP top, and I think I was talking to a couple of guys here in Atlanta. I think it's only my third GP I've been to, because I've been to 2 in Atlanta since I've started playing when I moved back up here. And this was my first one I actually traveled out for.
All right, well, awesome job, man. Kudos to you. Congratulations on the top, especially the paid invite, making it all the way to the finals to play against Ryan Miles, to lose to a god, unfortunately, who just happens to top all the events he needs to.
Hey, if you're gonna lose to somebody, lose to the best. Because then at least you could say you're second best.
True. Well, kudos to you, man. And it was nice having you on here. So that's Jake Adame, and we'll be seeing you around.